At that time, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It is not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be made manifest in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night comes when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." As he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay out of the spittle and anointed the man's eyes with the clay, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had sent him before as a beggar said, "Is not this the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." He said, "I am the man." They said to him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who was formerly been blind. Now it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. The Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight, and he said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner do such signs?" There was a division among them. So they again said to the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called his parents, the parents of the man who had received his sight, and asked them, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but how he now sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself." His parents said this because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess him to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner I do not know. One thing I know, that I thought I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you do not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you too want to become his disciple?" And they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciples, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he is from." The man answered, "Why, this is a marvel. You do not know where he came from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who speaks to you." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him.
Christ is risen. Close your eyes. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine what it would have been like to live in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. It's a city that's a lot different than Houston, Texas. It's a an area about half a square mile, a walled city filled with winding roads. There's livestock on the streets, people carrying carts of barley and wheat, olives and grapes, buying and selling in a busy marketplace. Each year, there's thousands and thousands of pilgrims that come. In fact, the city's population can sometimes be 5 times what it was the previous night on the holiest of feast days. And I'm going to ask you to keep your eyes closed just for a moment and imagine in the middle of that city with all that hustle and bustle, you are blind. How would you navigate such a city? How would you accomplish even the most basic tasks which we take for granted every day? Really think about that. Open your eyes. The gospel reading today, we hear about Jesus healing a man who was born blind. And we should always keep in mind when we hear the gospel readings that they are speaking to us today as Christians in our own lives. And the gospel of Christ healing the man born blind tells us something very unique about the Christian life. So we see Christ and his apostles, they approach this man born blind, and his disciples ask him, "Rabbi, who sinned that this man would be born blind?" Whose fault is it? This is clearly some kind of travesty. I mean, he's forced to beg. But Christ said, "No one sinned, but it was that the works of God would be made manifest." He goes on to say, "We must work the works of him who sent me." And we know who sent Christ. We know it was the Father. And as Christ is saying this, he spits into the dust, and he makes clay with his fingers, and he anoints the eyes of the man born blind. Now, if the story had ended there, then the message we get about the Christian life might be that we just have to kind of sit around and wait until God comes and fixes our problems for us. But the story doesn't end there. And what happened next, it's easy for us to overlook because we are not in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. So Christ tells him, the man born blind, to go and wash his eyes, which are now anointed with the clay that Christ made, in the pool of Siloam. What is the pool of Siloam, which is translated as sent? Apostomenos is the word from which we derive apostle, one who is sent. The pool of Siloam was a pool of water that was outside, during the time of Christ, it was outside the southeast wall of Jerusalem. It was also called the lower pool. It was called the lower pool because at the time it was built, it was at the lowest place geographically in the city of Jerusalem. In fact, from the pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount, there was about a 2,000-foot difference in altitude. And the pool of Siloam was traditionally where pilgrims to the temple would begin their pilgrimage. They would come to the pool of Siloam and wash, and then they would begin the ascent 2,000 feet all the way up to the Temple Mount. So now Christ is asking this man who is blind to go on what we can only assume to be a bit of a treacherous journey, not only outside the city, but on a 2,000-foot descent. This is not a city that's designed for accessibility, let's say. There's not electronic voice that tells you when it's safe to cross the street, right? There's not signs in Braille saying the pool of Siloam this way. So we can only assume that this took him a while, and that he probably got lost, and that he may have gotten mixed up in the crowds. He may have taken a wrong turn. He may have even fallen. And anyone who's walked down a slope, even on nice footing, knows that walking down a slope is a little bit treacherous, right? If you're walking up a slope, you fall. It's not such a far distance, but if you're walking down a slope and you fall, you could really do some damage to yourself, especially as someone who is blind again. What does this mean for us? Often in a Christian life, it can seem when we read the lives of the saints and other people who have been, touched by Christ, that there's like a light switch that flips. One day they're sinful and lost, and the next day, boom, they can see. The story of the blind man shows us that part of this process of being healed is stumbling, maybe getting lost, maybe taking a wrong turn. That is built into the Christian life. It's not expected that we do things perfectly the first time. But as we go through our week, Christ sends us out each week. We hear the gospel reading. We hear the words of Christ, the commandments of Christ. And he sets a standard, he sets a goal for us. He says, go here. And we try and we stumble and we do our best to make our way toward that goal. But he knows in the process of that we will get lost at times. We will stumble at times. We will fall at times. If we have faith in his word, we get back up and we continue. We will march toward our healing, and ultimately, at the end of the week, we ascend all the way back up and meet Christ once again and worship him. That's the cycle of the Christian life. It's just, we worship Christ, we're sent out as apostles. We fail, fall, do it again. This is the process of creation. This is what Christ says when he says, we must do the works of him who sent me. What is the work of God the Father? It's the first line we say in the Creed. It's the work of creation. And we are becoming new creations in Christ, and Christ has invited us to participate in that creation. And our participation in that creation is going to be a little messy sometimes, but we continue to strive and strive until we, like the blind man, can look at the path we took with new eyes, and we can see that every stumble we took, every wrong turn, ultimately led us to where we are now. And thank God, God is not done with us yet. Christ is risen.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back at St. Basil's. I've been gone for a couple weeks traveling. As you may or may not know, Father Luke had knee surgery this past week, and I've been communicating with him this past week. He's doing well. He wanted me to relay to his spiritual family here at St. Basil's that your prayers and your love is felt by him, and to continue praying for him and for his healing. Hopefully he will be joining us here, maybe not serving, but joining us here in the church that is so important to him and is such a vital part of our life and his life and us, that he be here, and hopefully eventually in a few weeks, God willing, he'll be able to continue serving the community of St. Basil's. Again, continue praying for Father Luke. He's doing well, and he sends his love, and he feels your love as well.
What he didn't say, but I'm saying, call me, don't bother him, let him recover. This week we have one service. We have Ascension, which is on June 13th. Now Ron has an announcement.
For our Goyans, Miriam is not here today. She's our choir director, and she is going to begin doing workshops for the Paraklesis service Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. at the Costas Hall in the Goya room, okay? So if you're a Goyan, you're middle school, high school, you're interested in learning about the Paraklesis service, how to chant it, some of the, about the Theotokos, and if you would like, we're giving them the opportunity, if they want to continue with that, of course they're welcome to just come as they wish and learn as they like, but if they would like, we can offer them during the upcoming Dormition Fast to actually participate in one of those Paraklesis services. So just Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. at the Goya room for those that are interested in our Goya to learn a little bit more about the Paraklesis service and chanting. And we also have our registration for Vacation Bible School for the kindergarten through 5th grade age range. Email me about that, and you should see both of those in your weekly email. They have signups. If you have any questions, email me or Miriam. Thank you.